On Thursday, September 8th, 2022, Queen Elizabeth II died peacefully at Balmoral Castle. Now, even though the UK and several other parts of the world are mourning, I think it's still useful to reflect on how Queen Elizabeth influenced English and what she actually meant for English and the use of English around the world. When learners start learning English, they always try to reach and become native speakers. They want to speak perfect English like native speakers in the UK. But in a country as diverse as the United Kingdom, with different countries together in one big country, it's difficult to find the perfect and standard variety of English. Now, you don't need to cross the entire country to find these varieties. Look at smaller differences between Manchester and Liverpool, where in Manchester you can find particular words and expressions and pronunciations that we don't find in Liverpool. And this amount of variety within the British Isles makes it very difficult to learn the one and only British English. And at some point people came up with the idea to look at the sovereign to create the standard variety of English. Now, this standard of English, also referred to as the Queen's English, is actually received pronunciation, which is considered the standard pronunciation of British English, and it's sometimes even referred to as the BBC's English. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of the Queen's English? Was she the person you tried to imitate when you're doing shadowing? Now, this received pronunciation is the standard British English learners refer to when they learn English, and it's also the standard pronunciation used in textbooks or when you try to look up something in IPA. Now, this term is a bit misleading because it does assume that there's only one variety of English when it comes to pronunciation. The term is rather old because in 1896 the term received pronunciation was first used, and it became more popular in 1924. There's a link in the description that teaches way more about received pronunciation than I will do in this video, so check that out if you're interested in received pronunciation. Now, this looking at the monarch to find the right pronunciation of English is not something that's only reserved for the contemporary times. In the times of James I, there's one person who already referred to the King's English as the standard variety of English, and this was nobody less than William Shakespeare. But as you can imagine, the Queen's English was nothing more than her own variety of English, with her own style and pronunciation, as everybody has their own version of English they speak. Now, the most interesting thing when it comes to the Queen's English was that her pronunciation changed. And as she got older, she didn't change toward the older generation of speakers, so she didn't adjust her language to those people. She adjusted her pronunciation to younger speakers of English. According to a very interesting research article who looked at her Christmas messages from 1950 to 1980, she adjusted her pronunciation as she got older to fit a standard Southern variety of British English. And this standard Southern British English pronunciation was mostly used by young people. So her pronunciation changed with the younger generation, not the older generation. And time made her actually sound younger instead of older. Now, maybe this change fits the entire idea that she wanted to modernize the monarchy. The biggest change that these researchers found in her pronunciation was the way she pronounced the vowels. Now, she didn't fully adapt to this standard Southern British English variety. It kind of moved towards it, and that means that even though it's not completely the same, they were able to detect some differences between the pronunciations that he used before and the pronunciations that she's using now, and these differences pointed towards this standard Southern British English. Now, in 1994, a very interesting research paper was published. And in this paper, the author talks about Royalese, some sort of variety of English spoken by royals in the UK. She mentions that there's something like conservative Royalese and modern Royalese, and Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II was one of those speakers of modern Royalese. There were some differences in the way these modern Royalese speakers pronounce particular words. The biggest example is milk, or the word house, which sounded more like house instead of huis. Now, a quick disclaimer, I'm not a phoneticist, so I'm not an expert on this topic, so I can't really show you what it sounds like, but in the article on received pronunciation, you can find a recording of someone speaking a very old variety of received pronunciation, and I assume that this is an example of this conservative Royalese. The Queen sometimes even did something like yacht dropping, which is where the J sound in something like tune or YouTube changed into tune and YouTube. This yacht dropping is something particular for American English, so it's interesting that a British monarch would use this feature that we only see in American English. Now, a Polish student did some research into the Queen's pronunciation of consonants, and he found that there weren't many differences in the way she pronounced her consonants in the 1950s and the 1980s. But he did say that she occasionally glottal stopped, which is when you say water instead of water or bottle instead of bottle. Now, he also mentions the yacht dropping, and he has this hypothesis that the Queen even drops her H's, something that's very, very familiar in a Cockney English accent. However, he debunks this myth and he says that she did not drop her H's. The interesting thing is, however, that we don't really know what the Queen's English really is. Imagine that you're holding a speech and you need to do it in English, which could be your second language. In those cases, you probably act differently than when you're speaking with your friends or your family, or when it's not a very serious occasion. Now, it could be that even Queen Elizabeth had some of these non-upper class features in her pronunciation, especially when she was speaking in informal situations, as is the case with all of the speakers of any languages. However, we don't know whether this was the case, because nobody has actually spoken to the Queen in a very informal situation. There's just some guesswork. So the Queen herself actually didn't speak the Queen's English at the end of her reign and near her death. She definitely had to adjust her language to a newer generation, and to make sure that those people understood what she was saying, she probably had to use some different vocabulary too. The thing is, we only know that the Queen spoke this variety of the Queen's English, and there's nobody who actually can do the same. More interesting is going to be what King Charles III does to English. Does he change his language now he's king to reach a broader audience? Will his standard English now become the King's English, and will every learner in the world try to reach the King Charles's pronunciation? However, what we do know is that the Queen's English was the standard English for 70 years. Whatever happens in the future, I hope that we'll have lots and lots of new content to analyze as linguists, and that we can say very interesting things about the way King Charles III pronounces words in English. Maybe at some point we'll get a king who speaks more like an American, and that British English will become more American-like. But I don't think that's going to happen soon. For now, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let's end by saying, long live the King.